What's up, pagan people? Drew here, and I'm doing another tag. This one is from Intuition and Intention, and it's called Which, What, When, Where, Why tag. This isn't formatted the way we're used to, like there's not a bunch of questions. It's just kind of a loose. And really what she wants is to kind of get at how people came to their path, essentially. So essentially what she's asking here is, what was the catalyst that brought you to your path, to paganism, witchcraft, what have you? When did you name it? Where were you in your life, and why? Why did you choose to walk this path? So this is nothing that I haven't discussed on my channel before. I have a few videos for different reasons where I talk about this kind of stuff. So if you've seen it all before, heard it all before, I don't blame you for clicking off. But I really did want to answer. I don't know. I just think she's lovely in all of her videos, the way she talks about things. And I just really wanted to respond to the tag. So here we go. So in her video, she gave a little bit of backstory, so I'm going to do the same. I have said many times, I was not raised with a religion at all. My exposure was very minimal, and it was from outside external forces. I went to church a couple times with a friend in grade school. I had to go with my grandmother for one summer when I stayed with my grandparents. And I honestly don't remember it at all. I don't know if I slept through it. I don't remember it at all. I remember having to go. And I even remember, I have one memory of sitting in the pews with her, but I really don't remember it. Though you'd have to think, if I was there for a month, you know, I wasn't even going to be there for 2 months, I wouldn't think. So, 4 to 6 times I went, I don't know. And I went to church with friends in high school because I was always seeking. Like, I remember very vividly, even though I was not taught there was a higher power, that wasn't something that was in my home. Like my father, if my father believes in God, he hates him. I don't know if he believes in the first place, but sometimes I remember him saying things that made me think, oh, you do believe there's something, but you're really pissed off at it. My mother believed, but she didn't really know what to believe. Again, when I think I was like 13, she went through this little phase where she went to church for, I don't know, a few months maybe. She tried to make me go. That didn't work. And I think that was purely because someone she loved had gotten into the church. So she was getting into the church, but my brother, but it didn't last long at all. Because again, she believed something, but that I don't think Christianity was the right fit. I remember, as I was saying, I remember very vividly being like, I don't know, I was younger than 9. I know that. Probably younger than 8. Standing at my window, crying and being very angry with, I didn't have words for it, but with spirit, because it was raining. And I was angry that it was raining because as a child, I didn't have a lot of playmates. I was kind of a lonely child. My brother was 5.5 years older than me. And I didn't have a lot of friends that lived nearby. There was one friend who lived somewhat close. I could get to her house by walking or by riding my bike, but I wasn't really allowed to do that at that age. But my mom had agreed to let me on this one day, and I was going to get to go, and it was raining. And I was so angry. And I remember knowing with every fiber of my being that there was a God, for lack of a better, there was a higher power. And I was very angry. When I was little, I named trees. The trees were my friends, and I named them. And as I got older, until coming to the other side, being on this side of my path, on the other side of what I refer to as my initiation, I remember thinking that that was just a child with a very active imagination, that the trees had sort of personalities and names and whatnot. Like that was just an overactive imagination. It wasn't until after, sort of coming to my path that I realized there was a lot more going on there. There are plenty other examples that I could give that lead me to believe that I've always been what I am. I just was not aware of it. So I've always been on a pagan path. I've always been pagan. I just didn't know that I was. I didn't have words for that. I didn't have context for it. So what was the catalyst? Well, again, a story I've told many times, so I won't go into deep detail, but I got viral pneumonia. And I couldn't get out of bed for a month and a half, and I wasn't fully recovered for probably more than 2 months. And during that time, a lot of very unusual things began to happen. And by the end of it, I was sure that I was mentally ill. And that's not, I mean, I was ready to go into an institution. I thought, yeah, I thought I was mentally ill. And my husband and my mother talked me off the ledge, and they supported me, and they helped me find information that put context to what was happening to me. And just in case someone isn't familiar, I was having what could have been hallucinations. I was hearing things and smelling things that no one else was. And by the end of it, when I was well enough to get out of bed, I began to realize that I could communicate with trees. And that's when I said, okay, yep, no, we need to find out what's happening here. Because I'm not okay. And I was having very vivid dreams that I understand now were about initiation, about being called to my path and my practice. And it was a very intense time. It was a very scary time. But that illness was definitely a catalyst. And again, I still didn't have a name for it. Fortunately, I kept getting intuitive messages. I kept getting guidance that I needed to buy certain supplies that I didn't have. And I could only think of one place to get them. And when I went there, I ended up, I knew the shop clerk. She was like a year older than me. I'd known her since I was a teenager. And I'll get to that because that's one of the other questions. But we had known each other many years. And when I asked her, I needed a gong. I was like, do you have a gong? And I heard someone say, I have a gong, and stand up. And there was this older woman, and it turns out it was her mother, whom I had never met. And they had a sister shop in the same plaza. They had just opened up. And it was a witchcraft shop, a metaphysical shop. I became fast friends with this woman. I worked at the shop for like 5 years. 4 or 5 years. I don't remember now. I think it was 5 years. At any rate, over a span of 5 years, at any rate, if not 5 full years. And I learned so much in that environment. I figured out who I was, what my path was. I found witchcraft. Although I had been exposed to Wicca when I was 18, me and 2 other girlfriends were gonna get all into that. But I got my hands on a Wicca 101 book. It was like a year and a day book. And I was like, no, it was just like, you need a cauldron, you need this, that, and the other thing. And like, that was not I was like, no, this is requiring far too much paraphernalia, really. Even though I own a ton of paraphernalia now, I know that I don't need that. And that's the sort of exposure I got the second time around coming into the shop. I was taught more by individuals around me who practice witchcraft than anything else. So that was very beneficial to me in my path. So that was kind of going to that shop and meeting my friend and my ex-boss lady was the catalyst for me becoming a witch. It says, when did you name it? I was working at the shop when I finally, the first time I said it to another person, a man had come in the shop and he was looking at me somewhat unusually. And he asked me I don't remember how he worded it, but he wanted to know what I was. And I told him I was a pagan. And I hinted at the shamanic aspect of the whole thing. And he lit up and we had a whole weird conversation where he talked to me about, we talked about several things. At any rate, it was actually a very validating, important conversation for me on my path. He seemed to recognize a spark in me or something. I don't know. It was weird. At any rate, I was very new into my path and practice at that point. At that point in my path, I was most focused on figuring out what these experiences I was having were about, and delving into that, discovering what that looked like, where it would lead me, what it was really. I didn't have any context hardly at all, other than some books that I had read. Everything was still very new, but that is when I gave my path a name. So I would say that was probably that was in 2007. And so where were you at in your life? In 2006 to 2007 is the initiatory period because it started on Christmas Eve. I woke up with this terrible pain in my side, and I thought I had appendicitis or something. I didn't know what was going on. Anyways, as it all played out, it turned out to be viral pneumonia. But I was going through that until sometime in February. Mid-February, I think, is when I could finally, get up out of bed and just be a normal human being. But I know that even at the end of February, because it was around my birthday and I had to go out and do some stuff, I was helping with some mild, light construction, building of some shelves. And I would get winded and I was so exhausted. It was horrible, just from nothing, really, just from being up out of bed, basically. I don't wish something like that on anybody. I mean, I am eternally grateful. I really am, because it brought me to where I am, but not a good time. I actually don't remember most of the illness. And what I do remember for the most part are really sort of mystical things. But at this time, I was 28 when I went through the initiation, and I turned 29 on the other side, just coming out of this illness. And so it was 29 when I really came into this whole, I'm pagan and I'm a witch and, the whole deal. It all happened. It happened very quickly. Everything happened very quickly after the illness. It was a huge catalyst. I had 3 children. I still do. I think my youngest had just turned 5, which would mean our middle child was 7 and our oldest was 9, because they're all 2 years apart. I was married to my husband, and another thing that happened to me that I don't actually talk about very much, when I came out of the illness, I feverishly wrote. I have a work of fiction that is very incomplete, this huge mythology. And I want to say this clearly. I didn't start working at the witchy shop until the summer of 2007. So it was probably June, maybe May. And from the time I came out of the illness in February until that time, I feverishly wrote this story. At this time, I was not practicing witchcraft. I didn't know anything other than what Hollywood told me about witchcraft or whatever. So it was just, I was like a mad person. I would be up, everybody would go to bed and I would be up writing until my husband got up for work the next morning, and then go to sleep and get back up and do it again. I do not fully claim credit for the story at all. For me, I feel like it was channeled, like it was dropped into me. It was insane. But it is all about, it's not really about witchcraft, but it is about magic and magical beings and I'm not going to get into it. I think it's a really good story. I wish I could finish it, because I think I would love to be able to publish it and people would be able to read it. But the tap turned off. It just turned off. The thing is like, it's a fully fleshed out world. I know, like, somebody who's in the story for maybe, they're just like a side character. I still know their whole backstory. Like, they're real. I know everything about them. So that was something that was going on in my life. I had this story and I felt I was just very engrossed in that until I started working at the shop. And I still, over the years, have worked on it. I mean, this has been a long time. This is since 2007. I do work on it occasionally, but it doesn't, I nitpick it. And I think I mess it up because I'm like, oh, that's not worded properly. Let me fix that. And I'm like, oh, was it better the first time? I have every draft though. I have the original and I have all the edits. But again, it's not fully fleshed out anyway, so it doesn't matter. And until somebody decides to drop that divine inspiration back into me, I don't know what to do about it. It's fine. It's fine. But essentially, I mean, that's basically, I was being a wife and a mother, and I had this story. And that's basically the place I was at until I started working in the shop. And then, oh gosh, I started learning about crystals and witchcraft and many different paths from many different people, all kinds of new age and metaphysical spiritual practices, and a little tiny bit about gods and goddesses from all over the world. And I was just really exposed to a lot of things. I learned how to give chakra readings, where I can feel the energy in your chakra points, and based on the information I know about those points, tell you things about yourself I shouldn't know. Tarot and oracle readings. I card readings. Again, I don't really read tarot, not properly. I read cards. I began to teach at the shop, and there was it was just a very intense, beautiful time and space. I do not feel like I chose to be pagan. I feel like I always was. I just didn't know it. And then finally somebody smacked me upside the head. And it's a lot more complicated than that. And I do believe that my path is shamanic based on my experiences and the things that I had no control over and that happened to me, and this studying shamanism from around the world and what that looks like and how that happens. So I no longer refer to myself as shaman, because I feel like my path is shamanic and my experiences, a lot of them are in a shamanic vein, but I don't actually go out into the community and do healing work or counseling or things that I feel deem someone shaman. I do those things in my home and with my friends, but I don't know. I'm just a witch. I'm a pagan witch. All right, I have rambled about this long enough. Hopefully, if you stuck around and you have heard these stories before, I told them in a way that I hadn't before and gave you some information that I hadn't maybe quite before. I'm going to stop talking. I've been talking way too long already. Thank you so much for hanging out and listening to me. Thank you so much. And I don't know her first name, and maybe she doesn't want people to know, but Intuition and Intention for creating the tag. I really think you're lovely. And yeah, until next time, much love and gratitude.